I'd like to provide you with a brief update regarding the officer-involved shooting that occurred yesterday afternoon. This is a difficult situation for everyone involved, and we're providing support to all those that were impacted. As a standard procedure in an officer-involved shooting, the investigation is now being led by the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team. As such, we are only able to speak to the events leading up to the shooting. It is the purview of ACERT to investigate and speak to everything during and after the shooting occurred. What I can tell you is the following. Yesterday afternoon, plainclothes officers observed 3 occupants enter a vehicle. Members believe that at least one occupant of the vehicle was wanted on outstanding warrants. They called for uniform backup and conducted a surveillance to a bank in the Crowfoot area. Once the vehicle was stationary in the parking lot, the female driver exited the vehicle and entered the bank. Uniform officers arrived and approached the car. While speaking with one of the occupants, a man jumped from the rear seat into the driver's seat and put the vehicle into reverse, striking the police vehicle. He then mounted the curb and drove on the sidewalk where he struck 2 elderly pedestrians. He then reversed the vehicle and struck one of the downed pedestrians a second time. The officers realized that the pedestrians were at serious risk and made the decision to stop the driver. Both pedestrians were taken to hospital. The female has serious injuries, and the man suffered minor injuries. The driver of the vehicle was transported to hospital where he remains in critical but stable condition. Based on the information I have so far, I'm confident that the officer involved made the best possible decision when confronted with a volatile and dangerous situation. We have a duty to protect life. The officer made a split-second decision based on his belief that the lives of others were at risk, especially the female who had been struck at least once and was still under the vehicle. All members involved in this incident have the full support of the police service and the police association. Although I'm limited in what I can say, I will answer any questions that you may have.
Can you just go through again? So it was unmarked vehicles that first pulled up, but then uniformed officers actually tried to talk to them?
What happened was the unmarked vehicles felt that there was somebody in that car that was wanted on warrants. They called in uniform officers to conduct a stop. By the time the uniform officers arrived, the vehicle had pulled up in front of a bank. The driver of that vehicle got up and went into the bank. So it was uniform officers that then approached the vehicle and began talking to the occupants.
How many officers went up to the vehicle?
You know what, there was 2 to begin with, and there were other officers at the scene. So that's part of the investigation, who arrived when, at what point they arrived, and those other facts.
The vehicle was surrounded by 2 unmarked vehicles, so can you explain how that kind of transpired?
No, you know what, I mean, what happened was there was a surveillance team that followed them into that parking lot, and they observed the vehicle park and the driver get out, and then the police officers, the uniformed officers arrived. So obviously the officers positioned themselves in a way that would immobilize the ability of that vehicle to move.
So after the fact, after the uniformed officer went up to the vehicle and approached them, then they took off, that's when they kind of surrounded the vehicle, the unmarked vehicles?
No. The vehicle with the bad guys pulled into a parking lot, parked, other vehicles, police vehicles arrived, and did what they do. They parked to immobilize the vehicle to prevent its options from driving away. It's what we do. And so the exact timing of what vehicle parked there at what point, that's part of the investigation. So I'm not going to get into what vehicle arrived at what point and where did they park and all that kind of stuff. Suffice to say that the officers arrived and approached the vehicle, and they parked their vehicles in a way that contained the subject vehicle as best they could.
Now I get what you're saying. Obviously after they parked it to immobilize, that's when the incidents happened on the sidewalk. So they ended up over here, right? That's what I'm just trying to describe, the final scene that we can see when we took pictures, right? Like obviously they immobilized it over here, uniformed, but then it ended up after the pedestrian.
After one of the occupants of the car jumped from the rear seat into the driver's seat, backed into one of the police vehicles, and then pulled onto the sidewalk in front of the bank and drove down that sidewalk, striking 2 pedestrians that had just come out of the bank.
Was the uniformed officer attempting to arrest the individual on board?
At this point in time, and this is what makes it so volatile, and this is why on any traffic stop it's a dangerous situation for our officers, because you don't know what you're dealing with. Quite simply, the officers felt that there was somebody in the car that may have been wanted for an outstanding warrant, and they were approaching the vehicle based on that idea. They were just doing a field investigation to find out who was involved. Turned out that the person they were actually checking to determine if that person was in the vehicle, the person with an outstanding warrant, wasn't even there. The reaction from those occupants of that vehicle was totally unexpected and showed a complete and utter disregard for the safety of anyone. The police officers, citizens that were in the area, and this is a high traffic area, pedestrian traffic area. There's C-train stations, the Tim Hortons, banks. The occupants of the vehicle showed absolutely no regard for the safety of anybody in the area, as is indicated by their immediate willingness to mount a sidewalk and drive over two innocent people who just happened to come out of a bank. So they did not know, the officers didn't know who those people were they were dealing with. They were quite simply doing a check to determine if it was possible that one of the people they were looking for on outstanding warrants was in that vehicle.
Did they end up finding, was the person who was the driver that jumped into the driver's seat, was that the person that was wanted?
No.
Is it the woman in the van?
No.
Was he known to police, or any of them known to police previously?
They, are you talking about the two male occupants in that vehicle are known to the police?
They are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, maybe can you say that again?
Okay, what his question was, did it turn out that the two occupants of the vehicle were known to the police? Yes, they were known to the police. They were just not known at that point in time to our officers that approached the vehicle. They had no idea who they were dealing with.
Was it serious crimes that they were?
And you know what, I can't get into that.
So the person that they ended up thinking that they wanted wasn't actually in the vehicle?
Correct.
Can you speak to the experience of the officers involved and what sort of circumstance they're in now in terms of leave?
Yeah, I can. Both of them had less than 2 years on the job. There were other officers on the scene there as part of that surveillance team that were far more experienced. They are trained. As a matter of fact, they have an obligation to protect the safety of citizens. And when they were faced with that situation, it was clear that there was absolute and total disregard for the safety of any citizen that was anywhere near there. We have to put this into context. It was a simple traffic stop. That's all it was. Pulled over. It could have been, I mean, there's been some comments made about it being in front of a bank. It could have been Emma's quilt shop. It didn't matter. The vehicle was stopped, the driver got out, uniformed police officers arrived, walked up to the window, and wanted to determine if the person they were looking for, who there was outstanding warrants for, was in that vehicle. Turned out he wasn't, but it didn't matter. For some reason, and hopefully this will form part of the ACERT investigation, one person in that vehicle jumped from the rear seat into the driver's seat, backed into a police car, put it in gear, mounted a sidewalk, hit two innocent senior citizens, drove over them, put it in reverse, was driving over them again before the officers were able to take the appropriate action to stop the menace.
So was it the man that, jumped from the back seat to the front seat that was involved in the shooting, the second driver, I guess, that was shot?
That's right.
And he's in critical but stable?
That's correct.
To clarify, it's two police officers who were on foot who opened fire then?
One officer opened fire.
One officer, and the officer was on foot.
Yes, he was.
And when you were speaking about two officers, you're talking about the two who were on the original ones on the call.
The two car crews showed up, two uniforms, and approached the vehicle to determine if the person that was wanted on outstanding warrants was in the vehicle. And they never did make the determination. It wasn't until later they found out that the occupant of that the person they were looking for was not actually the occupant of that vehicle.
So the two other people, the woman and the other passenger, they've been arrested, correct?
There are two people in custody. I believe, you know what, that's part of the ACERT investigation, but there are, that's ongoing, but all three occupants were taken into custody pending investigation.
There was a bus full of witnesses. Is that more part of the ACERT investigation, or have they been able to assist your officers as well?
Well, in assisting ACERT, they're assisting our officers as well. So we will do the investigation leading up to the event, and ACERT does the investigation that involves the police shooting. So everything up to the shooting and beyond is theirs. So right now there's a lot of witnesses. There's other video footage that's being obtained. It's being observed, and as the investigation progresses, as with all investigations, we'll get more and more detail that will give more substance to what actually happened. We've got a lot of questions too, like why would these people want to be so desperate to leave a scene that they would do what they did? It's, it was a simple stop to determine if the person we were looking for was in the vehicle.
Does their history explain that to you, though, once you now know who they are, like, are they pretty well known?
I cannot say that at this point in time, but they are known to the police.
Wait, so there were 3 people in the vehicle or 2?
When the vehicle pulled up in front of the bank, there were 3 people. That was being driven by a woman, and there were 2 other male occupants, one in the front seat passenger, one in the rear seat. Woman got out of the vehicle, went into the bank, so there was nobody in the driver's seat. When the police approached the vehicle, they went up to the driver's side door. It was at that point in time that unexpectedly and without any cause, the situation escalated dramatically.
Could that situation have been worse if the officer obviously hadn't shot this person who's obviously on top of this old lady and would have kept on going if they hadn't?
We can only speculate, but I can tell you this. The woman was on the sidewalk in an extremely vulnerable situation. And I can tell you that I think any actions on the part of that driver would have harmed her even further. And regardless of even her situation, that area has so much pedestrian traffic. And we're talking kids, we're talking adults, we're talking people that are just going about their business. And this driver showed a complete and utter disregard for the safety of anyone. And the results speak for themselves. Striking 2 senior citizens, putting one in the hospital in serious conditions, and driving on a sidewalk. And like I say, to our officer, it was just almost a routine traffic stop. Almost routine to the point where maybe there's somebody in there, there's a belief that somebody could be in there that's wanted on outstanding warrants, so you do a stop and check it out. You do not expect a reaction like that. I mean, we do thousands of traffic stops, hundreds of traffic stops a day, thousands a week. It just speaks to the volatility of what we don't know when we pull over a car. We don't know what those people are thinking, or what they may just have done, or they may be planning to do, or what they've done in the past, or but what it does demonstrate is those officers had to make a split-second decision to render that situation safe again. And the officers, in my mind, did an incredible job.
Can you say
There were
what the
people at
original
risk.
person that was wanted on the warrant, that wasn't even there, but can you say what he was wanted for?
No. It was an outstanding warrant. And my understanding it was Canada-wide warrants, but I can't say specifically what those were.
And they're not at all connected to these people at all?
Can't say that. I can just tell you that at this point in time, the person that we thought was in the vehicle that was wanted on outstanding Canada-wide warrants was not in the vehicle.
So is that because that person would normally be associated with that vehicle?
You know what? I don't want to get into those details. That's, again, it was our officers felt that there was somebody in that car that was wanted on Canada-wide warrants. A specific individual turned out not to be the person they were looking for.
Can I just clarify, so was the woman hit twice then, or just once?
To the best of our ability, or pardon me, to the best of my knowledge, she was struck once when the person jumped from the back seat into the front seat, and then he reversed, and my understanding is, and this forms part of the investigation, struck her again, a second time. And as I say, it was at a point in time that the officer did the shooting. But it will form part of the investigation because those types of details are, frame by frame by frame analyzed to determine what exactly were the sequence of events. But suffice to say, the officers quickly realized that this person was a menace and people were at risk,
And
serious
just
risk.
stop him?
Had to stop him.
I just wanted to clarify, so, and can you comment at all about the age of the person who's in custody, any of them?
You know what, I just don't know, but I think possibly our media people can give you that information if they have it. That could be part of the ACERT investigation. We may not be able to give that information at this point in time.
And when were
Suffice to say, they're not kids.
the surveillance vehicle, the officers in that vehicle never got out? They weren't?
I can't say they never got out.
Oh.
No.
They weren't involved in the shooting?
They did not shoot.
Or approached the vehicle?
The shots were fired by a uniform officer.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Nadia's got one.
How long prior to the traffic stop that surveillance
It was not very long.
So it wasn't like they were onto them for
No.
a half hour?
No, not even close to that. No.
The female driver of the car who went into the bank, the nature of her business in the bank, is that criminal in any manner?
There's nothing to indicate that there's anything like that. We don't know what she was doing in the bank. It's a fair question, but certainly there's nothing that indicates to us at this point that there's anything criminal about what she was doing in the bank, but I can't say for sure.
So just to clarify, the unmarked officers weren't following this car very long,
No, not very long at all. Mere minutes.
and then they called in the uniform, and that was minutes.
Because they felt that an occupant of that vehicle may have been a person they were looking for Canada-wide warrants, called in a uniform car crew to do the traffic stop,
Okay, so
which is
it's not like
standard.
they had this operation they were following, it was kind of they came
No.
upon this vehicle.
What it was, it wasn't a surveillance that had lasted for hours or a day or whatever, and leading up to a bank, and there's all kinds of speculation around that. The facts are that the surveillance team followed this vehicle for a very short period of time, called in a uniform car crew, who did that. By the time they got there, they'd already pulled up to the bank, had stopped, and as I say, it could have been any other business in the area they pulled up and stopped at. The vehicle was already stopped, pulled in behind it, and no reason to believe that the situation would escalate as rapidly and dramatically as it did in those seconds.
The police car, when the guy jumped over the seat, he ran the police car.
Reverse into the police car, onto the sidewalk, where he struck the two elderly citizens.
So the two male occupants were chilling in the back seat, both of them, and then one of them got into the driver's seat after the female left?
To the best of my knowledge, it was the female driver, male in the passenger side front, and male in the rear seat.
Male in the rear front.
Correct.
And was the female driver, was she also previously with the police?
I'm unaware of that. My understanding is I don't think so, but I'm unaware there may be some association, but I don't know.
Sir, what is their status in terms of custody or?
I don't know that. By this point in time, I can't tell you that. I don't know.
Okay.
Was the surveillance team, were they in the area doing something else when they happened upon the vehicle, or?
The surveillance team, I won't go any farther than to say that they saw what they thought was a person in that vehicle wanted on an outstanding Canada-wide warrant.
Was it a strike team member?
We can't get into that. They did the shooting?
No.
No, can't get into units that were involved at this point in time. I can tell you it was just a surveillance team.
And can you say how many times he fired his weapon, or is that pretty?
To the best of my knowledge, at this point in time, I have no reason to believe it was any more than 2 shots.